Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today is the last and final episode of reviewing NHL teams so far, as today we're going to be ending it all off with the Winnipeg Jets. And also we're going to be having a special guest in this show as well, as Pearlo Wisdom will be joining me later on to talk about the Winnipeg Jets moves and what will be next and what is their expectations going into this Canadian division. So let's get right into it. But before we do, I'd like to just say, if you are new to the channel, make sure to slap that subscribe button and hit that like button as well. That'll be very much appreciated. So let's get right into talking about the Winnipeg Jets, as they've been having a couple rough off seasons to say the least, with rumors about Patrik Laine and just overall the team now dealing with Jack Roslovic and his rumors of being wanted to be traded away from the Winnipeg Jets. There's been a decent amount of problems with this team, and it's kind of a bummer because they used to be a powerhouse. They used to be talked about as a Stanley Cup favorite. They almost made it to the Stanley Cup finals, but they got eliminated by the Nashville Predators. This team has been very close, but then they fell down and they lost most of their defensive core. And I would have to say this year was a very good improvement for the team. Trades-wise, they were able to pick up Paul Stastny from the Vegas Golden Knights. They didn't have to trade up very much. They legit traded away a fourth and called Dahlstrom, which is not very much. And Paul Stastny is going to be a game changer for the Winnipeg Jets. And I don't know if he's going to be playing like the same guy that he was in 2018, because he certainly has declined a little bit, but he's still a guy that still has that offensive capability and still can pass that puck. Yes, he's aging a little bit, but I think Paul Stastny could still play a very good game for the Winnipeg Jets, especially the way that he played alongside of Patrik Laine was the biggest reason why Kevin Cheveldayoff brought in Paul Stastny, was for that defensive working, and you're gonna, or for that offensive working for Patrik Laine, which you're gonna need that. You need a guy that can pass the puck to Paul Stastny. Brian Little really wasn't that guy. He was getting injured. He hasn't been healthy. Now he's on the LTIR. Now you give that chance to a Paul Stastny, and hopefully he pans out. Hopefully he's going to be your good second line centerman to make that top six a really, really good top six going into this year. Drafting wise, I think they had a great draft. Getting in Cole Perfetti, a guy that I think should have been near the top 5, but because of his size, kind of declined him a little bit. But he had a great year with the Saginaw Spirit, and especially a really good tournament with Team Canada there. He was one of the more players that I was really impressed with during that tournament. He was really speedy, and he just did the right things right out there, and he's a really, really good player, Cole Perfetti. And then otherwise, the signings for the Winnipeg Jets, they did a bit of movements. Like, the draft was really good because of the fact that they brought in some future defensemen. They didn't have a lot of picks, yes, but the Cole Perfetti move was just absolutely perfect for the Winnipeg Jets. Free agency, on the other hand, they didn't do a whole lot, to say the least. They did a little bit of signings, get Brossoit back on a year deal. Now, Brossoit has been back and forth. Some years he hasn't been too great. Some years he hasn't been the greatest. And in a year where you're going to need a tandem, Brossoit, I don't know if you could really trust him. He had a great year in 2019 with that 925 when the defense was sort of really good. And last year when the defense wasn't good, Brossoit was not there. And Hellebuyck was the guy that they were relying on heavily. And maybe you could rely on Brossoit a little bit more going into the season, but you might not be able to, right? Your defensive core is still about the same. They did slowly improve it, which we'll get into talking about when we get into talking about the Dylan DeMello move. But their goaltending is really going to have to handle themselves really good. Hellebuyck had a great year last year, but Brossoit is really, really going to have to step up big time for the Winnipeg Jets if they're going to be looking for any success, and not just that trying to make it into the playoffs. They're really going to need those the tandem to really work out for the Winnipeg Jets. Next up, Dylan DeMello. I think this signing was great. 4 years at $3 million. You look at a lot of the free agency signings that we've been seeing with Brendan Dillon, Joel Edmondson. They've been paying a pretty good amount of penny, but Dylan DeMello, I think this is the right amount of money for a good, solid defensive defenseman, and that's what Dylan DeMello is. He is a really, really good, solid defensive defenseman for the Winnipeg Jets, who's going to be pulling up some solid minutes for the team. And I mean, you look at the rest of the team. They brought in Nathan Bellevue, Lucas Spezia as well. Yeah, Bellevue there, Appleton, they signed him. I think Bellevue, was he already here in Winnipeg last year? Yeah, he was. He got traded to Winnipeg last year. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. And then Derek Forbort they brought in as well, which I think was a really smart move too. Really solid defensive defenseman. But I was watching a couple of videos, and I gotta say the biggest X factor out of this entire team is Sami Niku. What that Nyquist guy was saying, Sami Niku is gonna be a huge guy for the Winnipeg Jets. He had a pretty solid year for the Winnipeg Jets last year. He's been playing some hockey with them, but not a lot of hockey with the Winnipeg Jets. He has been up and down, and I think it's fully time for him to take that big step up here for the Winnipeg Jets. They have a spot open for him up on that top pairing unless Dylan DeMello takes it. But do you really want Tucker Poolman? Tucker Poolman's definitely not the worst defenseman, but his analytics definitely don't look the greatest for that guy in Tucker Poolman. So we'll have to see what happens to him. But they also brought in Nate Thompson. They also gave a PTO to Trevor Lewis as well. I don't think they gave anyone else a PTO from what it looks like. But Trevor Lewis, really good veteran leadership, more defensive working, and I like the way that they built the top nine. Yes, their top nine is definitely not going to be an offensive force to be reckoned with, but when you look at it, it's going to be some nice defensive working. Nate Thompson is not going to be anybody flashy, but he's going to be a solid shutdown centerman for you. Same with Adam Lowry, one of the best defensive forwards in the league. Mason Appleton and Andrew Kopp. It's a really solid, underrated top nine. It's definitely not the greatest offensively, but when you're talking about some defensive workings here for Winnipeg, this is where they're going to be really getting a lot of their defense, and that little bit of shortcomings on their defensive end, it's going to be helping them out a lot here for the Winnipeg Jets. Now, I don't see them doing a lot this upcoming season in the Canadian division. I don't see them performing the greatest as we're only a couple days away from the NHL season. The Winnipeg Jets look decent, to say the least, but they're definitely not a team that I see making it into the playoffs. Their defense is what really takes them down. Joshua Morrissey's really left out there to dry compared to all these other defense, and it really does suck. They do have some solid guys like a Neil Pionk and like a Morrissey, but the rest of these guys are like, they're top six guys. You really want these guys playing in your top six. Dylan DeMello's a 4-5 type of guy where you can play him in that top four, but he's mainly going to want to play in around these areas, and they might be playing him up on the top pairing for most of the year. So there's going to be a lot of big decisions that the Winnipeg Jets are going to have to make, especially they do got some young defensemen here in Hinola and Sami Niku, so there might be waiting on the future defensemen to start jumping up, as they did have a lot of young defensemen here in the training camp for their defensive core. So we'll have to see what happens for the Winnipeg Jets. I'm honestly going to give them, I don't know. I think I'm going to give this team a B, B+. I don't think they lost too much. They didn't lose like a Patrick Laine. They brought in good players. They didn't lose very much. They slowly improved the team. I'm giving it a B+. Now, it sucks they did lose Brian Little, but now you're able to bring in Paul Stastny to be that second-line centerman alongside Laine and Connor, who I think Laine will absolutely rip it up this season. So I honestly don't mind how the team is looking for the Winnipeg Jets. I think it's a very good offseason for them, and they're slowly improving their defensive core, and it's only going to go up from here. But I'm going to end the video here, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. But before we head out, we're going to be heading off to the interview with Pearlo Wisdom. Check all his links down in the description below, and we'll head off to the interview between me and Pearlo. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the interview part of the show, as I got Pearlo Wisdom here on the show, as we're going to be talking about Winnipeg Jets, the last and final show before we start up the regular season. So how's it going, Pearlo? How's your day?
Good. I'm actually doing a little football right now. I'm watching my Browns beat the Steelers. I know Steel from Steel Flyers is not going to be too happy about that, but it's all right. That's the way it is. Yeah, they're winning, so that's good. My Browns actually are going to make the playoffs for the first time in forever, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty big for the Browns. So let's get into talking about the Jets, as they've been having some rough off seasons the past two off seasons, but I would have to say this one's a bit more positive than the last one, as last year they lost Trouba, they lost Myers, they practically lost their whole defense core. This year they were able to kind of build it up a bit, I guess, but not really. But we'll get into talking about the draft that the Winnipeg Jets had. They only had about 4 picks, but they made those picks count as they won a pretty decent pick. They got 10th overall, top 10, and they got Cole Perfetti in that spot, which I would have to say is an absolute steal. Cole Perfetti was supposed to be up in the top 5 he was talked about, but probably because of his size and his weight, he dropped down a little bit. What do you think of this draft pick for the Winnipeg Jets? And do you think this guy could be a future number one centerman or second line centerman for the Winnipeg Jets?
Centerman, the thing I like about Cole Perfetti is he can play wing too, just as good as he can center. So that's always a bonus. Uh, the thing I think Cole Perfetti kind of dropped because he's kind of he says what he wants to say a little bit. He's not doesn't keep the box like they asked him questions that they they like stock answers a lot of times. I think managers do, and he doesn't give stock answers. And they asked him what team he'd like to play for, and he said, "I don't think I'd be a good team for a team that plays a trap or something like that." Now, in normal things, in normal sports, nobody would even think twice about it. But in hockey, it's like, oh, wow, you should just be happy where you play. It's kind of NHL is kind of like that. You're not supposed to actually make any waves, but and that is part of the reason why that apparently he dropped. Also, his skating is about maybe just about average to average, something like that. But all of the things that they said about Cole Perfetti, they said about Peterson when he was drafted out of Vancouver. And Cole Perfetti has hands that are slick, man.
Me and
Some
you've
of
been
the
watching him in the World Juniors, and my lord, he creates so much energy out there. He's nuts, absolutely insane out there.
Yeah, he's got a very you when he's on the ice, he looks like a guy who's going to succeed on that shift.
Hmm.
That really like nothing's going to stop this kid. He's like, I'm on top of it. I got it. Maybe there's a little bit of arrogance to do with that, but that's not too bad. Cockiness or whatever. That's good when you're on the ice to be cocky. I don't. I like him. I like him.
And you know what? I like him too. And I hearing him the other day. He was talking about analytics and stuff like that, talking about shots generated and the amount of momentum his line puts out. And I like when hockey players talk about analytics and stuff like that and them learning their craft because that's what it's all about. You can't just step on the ice and play hockey. You can, but if you want to get better at the game, you got to look at all the details that your team puts out. And especially for Cole Perfetti, he might not play very well in a trap game, right? You look at his stats from his younger days in midget and
Yeah.
junior, even in the OHL. This guy is a point producer. This guy has hands. He passes the puck. That's what Cole Perfetti does. And that's why I think he's a perfect fit for the Winnipeg Jets. They got a guy like Mark Scheifele who was a top 10 pick before, a very looked at centerman who is now really stepped into himself and has become a great number one centerman. And I think a very underrated centerman in the NHL. I know a lot of people don't talk about a lot of Winnipeg Jets guys, but Mark Scheifele is great for the contract that he has. And not just that, Mark Scheifele is just a great centerman overall for the Winnipeg Jets. So we'll get on to the big trade that the Winnipeg Jets made since we're talking about centermans. We're talking about a centerman for right now for the Winnipeg Jets as they picked up Paul Stastny from the Vegas Golden Knights as they traded away Carl Dahlstrom and a fourth-round draft pick that's conditional for 2022. What do you think of Paul Stastny coming back to the Winnipeg Jets, and what do you think this will do for Patrick Laine going into next season?
Well, Paul Stastny's got to kind of have a rebound year offensively. He didn't have the
Mm-hmm.
greatest year, and he's getting up there. He's 35, so it's a little bit worrisome in the sense that he is 35 now. He got like just around a point of a game last year, playing in a pretty offensive role for Vegas. However, he's a great two-way guy.
Mm-hmm.
Even if he does put the 40-50 point ratio up there, he's probably still better than anything they had. And the thing I like about it is it's encouraging for me that possibly they're trying to go look a little more towards keeping Lion A because Stastny and Lion A really got along well when they had Laine was not happy when Stastny left, and now he's back. So hopefully they can work out a contract with him for maybe half the money, and he can stick around for a little bit, especially if it's going to get Laine. I don't know what they're doing messing around with Laine. Okay, I've heard the rumor or the chat about how his attitude and stuff like that, and you have a little insight apparently about him being a gamer maybe or something like that. I don't know. Uh, he kind of looks lazy on the ice sometimes. I'll give people that. He kind of does. But so did Mario Lemieux because of the way he skated. But his shot is insane. He's already scored 40 goals in 1 year, and he was playing down in the lineup and still potting 30-goal seasons. I don't know about you. That's pretty hard to find in the NHL. I'm hoping that they're trying to make him happy here. And if Stastny's going to make him happy, sign him up for a little bit longer. Is going to make Laine happy, sign him up for a little bit longer. I'm all for it.
And maybe it's a negotiating tool as well. You'd be like, well, Stastny's expiring next year too, and the only way that we can bring Paul Stastny back is if you take a cheaper contract for more term, right? Like it could be a negotiating tip for the Winnipeg Jets. It could go wrong too for them, but I think the deal is perfect. You don't give up very much. You give up Dahlstrom and a fourth. That's basically nothing for a guy like Paul Stastny. Now, yes, it is a lot of money for the team, and it takes up money that you could have used for your defense core, especially since the defensive core is in shambles. They didn't really pick up too much, though, which we'll get into talking about as they picked up LAU for 2 years at 1.25 and Derek Forbert. They also signed back Sami Niku as well. They also got Dylan DeMello on to re-signed him for the next 4 years. What do you think of the new defense core the Winnipeg Jets have built for their team? And do you think it's improved from last year? And will it handle the Canadian division?
I'm still not a big fan. I think Derek Forbert's playing a little high in the lineup. Now, that being said, Derek Forbert has fought for every inch of ice time he's got in the NHL. And LA was very patient with him. He's got a great attitude, a lot of great stuff that you like to hear from a player. But honestly, I think he's better in a 5-6 spot. Dylan DeMello, I like him. Not sure I like him in a 1-2 spot. Uh, um, I think they still need work on their defense. Is basically what I'm saying here. You still got Tucker Pullman in a top six role, from what I can see, unless Heinola can can play. He's looked really good in the World Juniors. He's a
He
slick
has.
he's a slick little player. He put up some decent points last year. I don't know what he is size wise and how he's going to do physically in the NHL. Maybe he can come up. There's also what's his name starts with an S. The top of my head, I'm looking at him right now. Um, I think he
Oh,
played.
God.
Jeez, good thing we prepared for
Sandberg.
that.
Sandberg or
Sandberg.
Stanley?
Sandberg. I don't think Stanley's going to play in the NHL. I think they made a
Really?
mistake. Yeah, I think they made a mistake with that one. Sandberg though is, and he could be
Yes.
ready right away. So they're leaving spots open for the kids here. Maybe Sami Niku. He needs to have a bounce back. Sami Niku was looking really good, and then last year he kind of lost his balance a little bit. About he was over aggressive when he shouldn't, and it's like he took a step back. So possibly Sami Niku puts it all together and he can play this year too. So I think they're looking at all that right now and hoping that something happens there. We got to remember, let's face it, it's like the elephant in the room with Winnipeg. Nobody wants to sign in Winnipeg. We
Mm-hmm.
have the same problem with the Edmonton Oilers. Nobody, it's a cold city and it's not a sexy city. It's a
Not
great
just
city
that.
if you ever go there and know the people and stuff like that, but you got to get there first
Yeah.
before you know that, right? That's the thing. Yeah.
And there's no
So,
airports there either, so you gotta bust it to somewhere, and then you got an airport, and Hinola played last year for the Winnipeg Jets and did pretty well. And like you were saying, he was playing fantastic
yeah.
and Finland there. So I'll let you continue though.
Yeah. Heinola, it's the good thing about it was they got Stasny, though.
Yes,
Because he is a fantastic defensive center. So
he really is.
at the very least, they have two um, extremely good two-way centers to play back for their defense. Like Shifley and Paul Stastny is one of the best 1-2 centers in the league, maybe the best for defensively speaking. Anyways,
Hmm.
you're not going to get any better than that. So at
Well,
least they compensated a little bit that way. Not to mention Ehlers is no slouch in the defensive side. Kyle Connor could use some work, but Blake Wheeler is really good defensively too.
and their
Their
depth
forwards
is
no
not that
defense.
bad.
Yeah, their
Uh,
forward depth is good.
the only problem is their defense and Hinola. Like I think he's a small defenseman, but seeing him in the World Juniors, he does play a bit of a physical game. Like you could see him sometimes he would step up physically, but like other times, like he was a crisp passer, and especially when he played just 8 games last year, he had 5 points. He played pretty well. Of course, they didn't want to use too much of his contract up, but it looks like for right now for the Winnipeg Jets that I think they're waiting on defense, and I think that's the best way to possibly do it. And especially when you don't have the cap to bring in players to help you out, you really can't do anything about it. So I think we'll get on to the last couple signings, I guess. Nate Thompson signing there, just a small little signing. What do you think of bringing in Nate Thompson? He's kind of been all over the NHL, in the NHL, playing for multiple teams, Boston, for a little bit, New York, Tampa Bay. What do you think this kind of leadership brings into the Winnipeg Jets? And do you think it'll maybe help out Line a little bit, maybe get back on that right road going into this upcoming season?
Well, I know also a Philadelphia fan, as you know, and he did play for in the playoffs for him. Nate
Hmm.
Thompson is just very limited.
Yeah.
You gotta let him just be what he is. He's out there to bring the pain. If you're going to go
Hmm.
out there, just go out there and bring pain. And they kind of needed that. They don't really have a guy like that. Like Jansen Harkins, he's a good story, but he's not going to really, scare anybody. Mason Appleton plays hard. He would be the only other guy. Adam Lowry is a tough guy, but he's so busy playing defensively. He's not a guy that's going to go out and really punish people. And by the way, we forgot about Adam Lowry. Is there a better
Yes.
top three defensive centers in the
No.
league? No. These are the best top three. This is the best top three defensive center in the league, no doubt
I
about it.
love I love Lowry.
Yeah.
I absolutely love Lowry. I
Yeah.
think the way he plays, he's a big guy, but he's such a good third line C for the team. And I think a lot of people underrate him because of the fact he doesn't produce offense. But when you talk about this guy analytically for defense, he's such a pivotal guy for this team. And I think you looking at the Winnipeg Jets, it seems like they got things backwards because their offensive core is like more their defensive end. They got a lot of good offensive people back, and with Morrissey and Pionk and Pullman, and then you got guys like Lowry and Kopp and Nate Thompson and Stastny now and Shifley and Wheeler. You got so many good defensive guys on this team. So we'll get on to the last question with you, Perlo, and we'll get on to your final thoughts for the Winnipeg Jets and what grade will you give the Winnipeg Jets for their offseason?
Well, I kind of got to reserve that. I'm really disappointed that they haven't been able to do something with Roslovic yet, and he's going to,
Yes, that too.
yeah, because that would do a lot for this lineup as well. Um, as we're talking about this, I was going to give them like a C plus, but the more we talk about it, the more I think about the way Paul Maurice plays, his style is, and the way he can do a lot with this lineup. He simply brings forwards back to help his defense, and you've got Hullebuck there. I think they can cover up a lot of the deficiencies that way. The more now that we talked about it, this Winnipeg might do a lot better than we think because of that, because they're bringing in Stastny and stuff like that. So I'm going to say that with the restrictions that Cheveldaev has, as far as being able to, he can't just snap his fingers and bring free agents to Winnipeg. So I'm going to
Hmm.
give him a B. A B. I won't give him a B plus because I think the whole Roslovic Lion A drama and all that kind of stuff like that. I don't know what's going on there. Maybe he's doing the right thing, but it's certainly difficult on an organization to always have this kind of signing drama going on. It was true, but now it's Lion A, it was Roslovic, and and I personally don't like that energy going into a season. Uh, so I'm going to give him a B for basically. And not only that, there's another aspect we didn't think about that. I am not jumping through hoops about Laurent Brossoit being the backup uh, for Hellebuck, not myself. He's meh. He's kind
He
of meh.
had a pretty bad season last year. The year before, he had a great season. He put up some real good numbers, but he definitely he's an off and on backup goalie. We've seen it when he was in Oil Town. He's some years he just looks like he's a great backup goalie, and then there's other years where he's just like total just pancakes.
Yeah,
Roslovic, we didn't really talk about him. Yeah, all the drama and stuff like that, but Roslovic hasn't had a breakout season yet. I don't know what's entirely going on there between Shovel Dayoff and Roslovic and what's going on and what they're disagreeing on. But Roslovic is not worth very much right now. And if you're trying to trade Roslovic, it's going to be pretty like it's going to be easy. There's going to be a lot of teams chomping at the bit, but there's not going to be a lot of teams that are going to be paying a lot to get this guy from the Winnipeg Jets, especially since he's a first round guy. We'll have to see how it all turns out, though, and see if he actually does get traded away, or there'll be like the same kind of thing that happened with Pierre Dubois, where he'll sign like a 2-year deal for something like that. But hopefully, they figures whatever's going out there in Winnipeg. I think it's just the thing that no one really wants to play in Winnipeg, which kind of sucks because as a fan of the Winnipeg Jets, my second favorite team. It does suck to see some of these players not wanting to play there at some moments of time. We'll have to see how everything turns out for Roslovic, though, as I'm going to end the video here, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Pearlo, for being on the show. All his links are down in the description below, and I'll see you guys all later. Adios, amigos.